Welcome to the in-between. Some cities are destinations, others are departures. St. Louis is both. For centuries, it has been the place where East meets West, where fortune hunters set their sights on gold, and where riverboats carried secrets that never made it home. Here, the Mississippi whispers like a confessional, and the streets, layered with centuries of laughter, violence, and loss, speak in their own dialect of echoes. Listen closely, and you'll hear it. The clink of a glass in a room long empty. A voice that calls your name, though no one stands behind you. Or music that strikes up in houses abandoned to silence. This is St. Louis, a city of crossroads. And in the shadows of crossroads, you often find what the maps forgot to mark. The Lemp Mansion, the haunting legacy. The Lemp lineage soared with the pioneer Johann Adam Lemp, a German immigrant whose family brewery became a dominant force in 19th century St. Louis. By using the natural caves beneath the city for cold lagering operations, a technique drawn from his homeland, Adam's Western brewery thrived. His son, William J. Lemp, further transformed the enterprise into a national powerhouse, introducing advanced refrigeration and even rail distribution. The Lemp Mansion, completed in 1868, was built as a Victorian showplace above one of these cave systems, connecting home and brewery through secret tunnels carved into the limestone below. Tragedy followed the family's ascent. William Sr.'s favored son, Frederick, passed away in 1901, and not long after, William Sr. took his own life in the very office that now serves as a dining room in the mansion. His son, William Billy Jr., overwhelmed by the pressure of Prohibition and personal estrangements, including a scandalous divorce, soon followed in 1922, reportedly ending his life within the home. The spell continued with Charles Lemp, who inherited the mansion, shot his dog, and then himself in 1949, leaving a note ominously reading, "In case I am found dead, blame it on no one but me." In total, 4 Lemp family members committed suicide, with 3 occurring inside the mansion walls. The mansion's architecture bears the scars of this history. Ornate features remain: hand-carved African mahogany mantels in the parlor, a hand-painted ceiling, and the Italian marble mantelpiece in William Jr.'s office. There's also an exotic glass-enclosed shower in the main bathroom, imported from an Italian hotel, alongside the original decorative iron gates from an open-air elevator that once connected the floors and now reside in the basement restaurant. As time moved on, the mansion decayed, its ornate flourish replaced by neglect. By the 1970s, the house had become run down, but with restoration efforts, it was reborn as a restaurant, inn, and event center. Still, legends persisted. Workers on site reported tins rattling in storage, tools mysteriously vanishing, a pervasive feeling of being watched. But the truly uncanny moments were glasses flying off bars, doors locking themselves, lights surging on and off, and spontaneous piano music echoing in empty rooms. 3 zones of the mansion are notorious for activity: the grand stairway, the attic, and a section dubbed the Gates of Hell in the basement, the original entrance to the cave system beneath. Within the attic, the ghost of William Jr.'s illegitimate son, referred to as the monkey face boy, who reportedly had Down syndrome and was confined there, has been glimpsed peering out of the small windows from the street. Meanwhile, in the women's restroom, once William Jr.'s private space containing that glass shower, multiple female visitors have reported a man leaning over the stall, even though no one had allegedly left the bar at that moment. Paranormal investigators and historians both weigh in with conflicting views. Some, like Betsy Bellinger, embrace the ghost stories as a way to keep the Lemp legacy alive, citing possible apparitions of Billy, Charles, and their mother, known as the Lady in White. In contrast, historians like Amanda Clark caution against sensationalizing mental health tragedies for profit, although the tales unquestionably keep the Lemp name and its cautionary lessons alive. The mad scientist experiments in the shadows. St. Louis has always attracted wanderers, inventors, and opportunists. Among its stranger figures was a man remembered only as Dr. Emil Korda, though some said Korda was not his real name. His accent placed him somewhere between Bohemia and Austria, but beyond that, no one could say for certain. Korda arrived in the city in the 1880s, when industry was booming and entire families earned their living in the vast brewery tunnels carved into the limestone beneath the streets. While most rented space for lagering beer, Korda reportedly leased a section for chemical research. He told neighbors he was experimenting with tonics and compounds, an unlicensed pharmacist, people said, selling small vials of powders and elixirs to laborers who swore by their effects. The stories that survive are less about menace than peculiarity. Delivery men spoke of the acrid tang of chemicals wafting from his cellar rooms. A shop clerk recalled that Korda would buy odd combinations of herbs, alcohol, and minerals, scribbling notes in a foreign script no one recognized. Children dared each other to peer down the stairwells of the buildings he rented, where glass jars glinted in the dark. And then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, Korda was gone. One spring morning around the turn of the century, his rooms were found locked, the rent unpaid, the equipment cleared away. No forwarding address, no ticket purchased under his name, no record in the newspapers. Some whispered he had fled back to Europe. Others said he moved deeper into the tunnels, living out his days in the city's underground labyrinth. To this day, the legend of Dr. Emil Korda lingers in St. Louis folklore. He was not remembered for violence or madness, but for a curiosity that made him both fascinating and unsettling. A chemist without license, a pharmacist without a shop, a man who belonged to the city for a time and then slipped away, leaving only questions in the shadows below. Zombie Road, a path less traveled. On the outskirts of St. Louis runs an old trail that refuses to let history fade. Officially known as Lawler Ford Road, locals christened it with another name, Zombie Road. Not because of shuffling corpses, but because those who walk it claim to see things that don't belong in the world of the living. Once a path for Native Americans, later a route for industrial workers and river travelers, it has soaked up centuries of footsteps. Stories tell of shadowy figures watching from the trees, of whispers that grow louder the further you walk, and of strange lights flitting between branches with no earthly source. Some speak of a spectral watcher, a figure that patrols the path, appearing suddenly before vanishing into the brush. Others insist the road bends time itself. Distances feel wrong, hours vanish, and hikers return with the eerie sensation they've stepped out of sequence. It is not merely a road, it is a scar, and scars always remember the wound. Chuck Berry's crumbling home. Hail, hail, the ghost of rock and roll. In North St. Louis sits the modest house where Chuck Berry, the father of rock and roll, once lived. It should be a monument, a shrine to the man whose riffs shaped modern music. Instead, the home is crumbled, windows boarded, bricks cracked, its legacy fading under dust. Yet the house feels restless. Visitors have described the uncanny sense of being watched, as though the walls themselves remember the days when guitars rattled their beams. Some swear they've heard faint strains of music on still nights, Berry's iconic riffs playing from nowhere. It raises an unsettling question.
Can a home be haunted not by tragedy, but by creativity too immense to be contained? If ghosts are echoes of energy, perhaps this house does not mourn Barry. It still plays him, over and over, like a record needle that refuses to lift. Calvary Cemetery, the quiet parliament. Spanning over 470 acres, Calvary Cemetery is one of the largest and most historic burial grounds in the Midwest. Here lie bishops, generals, pioneers, poets, and thousands of ordinary citizens who built the city. But to walk its grounds is to feel that history is not at rest, it is merely in session. The cemetery has long been a place of whispered sightings, ghostly carriages that appear at twilight, voices that call from nowhere, and figures that vanish behind mausoleums. Some say the cemetery hums with a low vibration, a resonance felt in the chest more than heard in the ears. In a city so layered with triumph and tragedy, Calvary is less a graveyard than a council hall of the past. The names carved into marble may be weathered, but their presence lingers, an assembly of the forgotten, still casting silent votes on the shape of St. Louis. Gangsters and shadows, the underworld of St. Louis. During Prohibition and beyond, St. Louis was a city that lived in two rhythms, one played by jazz and blues, the other by the crack of gunfire. Gangsters controlled neighborhoods, speakeasies flourished, and deals were sealed in whispers and blood. Rival outfits like the Green Ones and the Russo Gang carved out territory, and violence spilled into alleys and taverns that the city tried to forget. In those days, the river carried more than barges. It carried secrets, weighted down and left to drift where no questions could follow. The city's gangland past left scars that never fully healed. Empty buildings still seemed to hold their secrets, chairs pulled out as if waiting for men who will never return, neon signs flickering where once money flowed like the river. Some say you can still hear the echo of engines idling outside long-shuttered taverns, or see phantom headlights flashing across brick walls. And while the names have changed, the shadows haven't vanished. The bootleggers of the 1920s gave way to heroin and cocaine pipelines in the 1970s and 80s, and those in turn to modern street gangs, moving product in the same neighborhoods where speakeasies once hid behind false walls. Bullet holes may be patched, but the silence of witnesses remains the same. In certain bars, in certain blocks, you'll still hear talk that feels like code, half jokes that smell of menace, deals struck with the same mixture of loyalty and fear. The underworld of St. Louis has always been adaptive, shifting with the times, but never truly gone. Just as the Prohibition-era car chases left skid marks in the alleys, the violence of today leaves behind murals, candles, and vigils for the fallen. The faces change, but the rhythm is unchanged. Jazz on one side of the wall, gunfire on the other. Crossroads keep their deals. We came searching for hauntings, and instead found an atlas. The Lemp Mansion, with its dynasty of sorrow. Zombie Road, where time itself seems uncertain. Chuck Berry's home, a crumbling shell that still hums with the birth of rock and roll. Calvary Cemetery, where history's council never adjourns. The fleeting figure of Emil Korda, chemist or charlatan, who vanished into the city's limestone heart. And the shadows of gangsters, whose rhythms echo from speakeasies to street corners even now. Together, they sketch a portrait of St. Louis, a city built on crossroads, where every alley and river bend holds a choice, and every choice leaves a mark. Some cities invite you to pass through. St. Louis asks you to linger, to listen, and once you have, you may find its voice follows you long after you leave.